Hey, Alec with Druid Dice here. Today we're going to be going over how to make your own custom mica alcohol inks using alcohol and mica. So grab yourself an IPA, grab yourself some isopropyl alcohol and your favorite mica, and let's get started. Alright, so if we're going to talk about mica powders, we should really know what we're doing and take a moment to understand what mica powder really is. So mica powder is a mined ore that comes from a lot of different metal types mostly. So titanium oxides, iron oxides, and etc. Now most of these are going to be formed in a 15 micron powder, but it's not completely uniform. You can get anywhere from like 50 to 200 micron all the way up to 1000 micron if you really want something not chunky. There are synthetics out there that aren't mined and they have their positives, but the biggest drawback for me personally is they're so uniform that you don't get the really pretty natural swirl and depth that you do with the traditional organic mica powder. So when you're sourcing your mica powder, it's important to keep in mind of a couple things: micron size, coloration, and last but not least, price. Because mica powders can get really expensive. If you're looking for some really beautiful budget mica powders that aren't going to break your bank but still do a lot of good work, check us out at druiddice.com. We have a full line of Druid dust with just about every color of the rainbow. Now that said, when it comes to mica powders, the reason you want to really focus on the micron is the bigger it is, the heavier it is. And the heavier it is, the more it's going to sink. So keep that in mind as we go through and you're building your alcohol ink mica combination, because the heavier your saturation of the alcohol ink as we get to the point where we're making it, you're going to run into issues where you'll have a lot of excess sinkage while some of it floats. But we'll cover that in the next step. Let's go grab our IPA. Alright, no air. Ooh, that's gone bad. Let's see. Here we go. Wait a second. So you don't want IPA as in the alcoholic beverage. What you want is isopropyl alcohol. Here it is. So you want as high of a percentage as you can get. Today I'm going to be using 91% isopropyl alcohol. The other percentage part in that is water, and we want as little water in our resin as possible. So keep that in mind when you're trying to source it. A lot of pharmacies will have 90% or higher, but if you can't source a high percentage like that, 70 can work. You just have to be really careful because you're now adding a lot of water to the equation, which can cause resin to not cure properly. And nothing's worse than pulling a bunch of goopy dice. That said, when it comes to alcohol, you can also use denatured alcohol or mineral spirits. Those will work as well. The important part is you just want to use a lesser concentration if you end up having to use those, since their saturation's going to be a bit lower, as well as they'll interfere with the resin as well. So if you are using those, make sure you do about half as much as I show in our mixing steps. So now that I've got our alcohol, let's go ahead and get to it. So we've got our IPA. Now with the isopropyl alcohol, you're really going to want to make sure you have a proper device in order to actually get it to your dice mold and your resin. So pouring it out of a cup definitely isn't the best way to go. You can use a toothpick, but I highly recommend using either a pipette or a syringe. In today's example, we'll be using a syringe. I recommend going with one that's got a rather large tip. So something that's like 24 gauge or more. These particular ones are like oral medicine syringes. You can pick them up off of pretty much any big box store nowadays, but I'll have a link below on what I use for both syringes and pipettes. So that said, let's go ahead and get down here and I'll show you exactly how to mix it up. So we've got our mica powder that we've just carelessly spilt all over, a cup for mixing in, our syringe for keeping it, and our isopropyl alcohol. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get your mica powder And I will usually recommend starting with about, a teaspoon. So just about like so. Okay. And then gotta take your isopropyl alcohol. And if you have a separate cup on the side, you can use that. If you're using a syringe or a pipette, handy dandy, it actually has your graduated measurements on it. In my case though, my pH is running a bit on the low side. So let's see if we can do this without making a mess. Nope, that's gonna end in despair. So we're gonna go ahead and use the old cap trick. So I'm going to pour into the cap, and you really don't need a lot. You need like 2 milliliters at most. There you are, see? So that's a pretty heavy amount, but I'm making a big batch. If you were using a pipette and just doing this in a one shot, then you definitely wouldn't need that much. But I want to make enough to save for later. So you can see as soon as you get your alcohol ink in there, as soon as you get your alcohol in there, you can see it already starts to mix in with your mica. Now the greater the mica powder granule size, the larger the the less likely it is going to mix. This stuff is ultra fine, so this is 50 and smaller, so it mixes pretty much instantly on its own. You can already see it's got a really nice metallic sheen that we're going to be taking advantage of. Now this is also super thin, so I'm going to add another teaspoon of our mica. Switch it around. And you really want to get it so with the ultra fine or anything under 100 you're running into where as you swish it, it should pretty much all be absorbed by the alcohol ink. You can see it's still really liquid, but now you see how it just kind of got a little bit more thickness to it. So this is almost where I want it to be. So I'm going to take about half as much as I added my previous times, and into the mixture you go. You really want to push it to its full saturation point. Now keep in mind, this is evaporating while you're doing this, so it's important to work quickly, and I would call that a really heavy saturation. So when you get to this point, you're going to take your tool, and then you really want to make sure you're scraping it and getting all of that beautiful mica down and mixed in. Now we're going to take our syringe and place it in and absorb it up. If you're using a pipette, you do the same method. Don't worry about getting air in there because we're just going to flip it over. So don't worry about the excess air. We're just going to go ahead and evacuate it out. Being mindful not to cause a little volcano of mica. Boom, there we go. And now we are all set. So next step, just like we would normally, we're going to go ahead and get a dice mold all prepped, and then we'll make some beautiful dice. We are all set up and ready to go. I've got my resin here ready to mix. You'll notice this is a bit yellow. It's because we're using a polyurethane resin. You can see I've got my mix here, and the bottom, all that alcohol has evaporated away, but we've kept it in the syringe. So you can see we've got some separation. So we're just going to put our finger on it and give it a good shake. Just like if you were using an alcohol ink, such as Ranger's Mixative line, got some heavy pigmentation, and now we're all good to go again. So first things first, we're going to mix this together. Beautiful, beautiful. You can see it's starting to clear up now. Remember, every resin's different, so pay attention to what you're using and be sure to follow the safety data sheets of that resin. Okay, so I think we're just about all mixed up, so we're ready here. For this particular set of dye, I'm gonna add just a little bit of coloration as well with our alcohol ink. And in that form, I'm just gonna be doing a little bit of sparkle. Nothing too crazy. I just wanna add a little bit of shimmer throughout the entire dye. Yeah, now we have a nice glitter sparkle joy. So we're gonna go ahead and pour into our mold now. For the particular technique we're going for today, you wanna fill it about 3/4 of the way full. Much like with our Petri technique, we're following those same steps from our Petri. So we're filling it up the majority of the way, leaving room for excess so we can cap and make sure we don't run into cure inhibition issues. And remember, that's extremely important if you are working with a higher water content alcohol. Go and get some of that excess out of there. So I'm going to take this. I always shake it again before use. We'll test off the mold to make sure we don't have any sort of, yep. See, I had a lot of buildup there. So now I'm going to take it. We're just doing the smallest amount we can here. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got our alcohol ink in and looking beautiful. We're gonna let that evaporate a little bit with the aid of some fuego. Now, alcohol is flammable, so you want to make sure you're being careful and balancing, because if you're not, you'll see you make fire. We want to avoid the fire. So just we're trying to help it evaporate. Now we're gonna pour on the edge, so that way the excess resin spills into the mold. And now we're just helping it along here. I wanna make sure I get good spread and coverage. This polyurethane is extremely on the light side. And for this particular effect, I want to make sure we're getting it, because we've got a really like metallic-y, smoky mica here. And so I'm going for like a really like dark kind of murder, smoke, ninja vibe. And then we're gonna go ahead and line everything up. This looks good. I'm gonna flip right on there. Beautiful, and now we are ready to put this into the pressure pot. Our resin's had enough time to cure, so now we're gonna be depressurizing and popping the pot and seeing exactly what we got. Fingers crossed, we got something beautiful. Ooh, it looks good. I mean, the pressure pot insert looks good. Go ahead and come on in and we'll take a closer look here. All right. So, looks nice. Got a little bit of flashing on here we need to take off. No big deal. Now this polyurethane resin does have a really fast cure time of an hour, which is why I'm using it. And you can see because of that, I've got a little couple bubbles that snuck their way in. This stuff should be vacuumed, but that's all right. Yeah, this is exactly what we were going for. Well, this set came out absolutely beautiful. These dice came out awesome. We've got really beautiful coloration for that nice silver, smoky, dark feel vibe I was going for with this particular mica powder. And on top of that, we've got some really nice defined plumes that came from using the Petri style effect that you just really couldn't get with the mica powder on its own. So I went heavy on this particular dice set, but if you're doing this at home, you can, rather than using a syringe or a pipette, you can also use a toothpick or other tool to do just a really small application. And you can even ink sink it using Blanco Blanco, just like you would with a traditional Petri, if you really want to nail that Petri effect, but have the diversity and really nice color swirl and play that you get with traditional mica powders. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this tutorial with me. Happy casting, and we'll see you around. By the way, we're going to be at PlanetCon Kansas City from April 22nd through the 24th, that weekend. There's going to be some amazing guests there like Adam Savage and so many other amazing artists and makers. I definitely recommend grabbing a pass, checking out the con, and visiting us at our booth. We're going to have dice sets for sale as well as other special items that you can only get through our con events. So if you like tabletop gaming, comics, and some cosplay, definitely come join us. I'll leave a link to tickets below for PlanetCon and hope to see you there. Happy dice making.